Hi, it's Katrina! From a great white shark forgotten in a shed to bathtubs filled with bullets, here are 9 of the creepiest things discovered in abandoned places. Number 9. Mummified Sailor's Letter. In March 2016, roughly 40 miles off the Philippine coast, 2 fishermen spotted a 40-foot abandoned yacht. It belonged to a long-missing sailor, 59-year-old Manfred Fritz Bajorat. Inside, they found the mummified remains of Bajorat, who abandoned his vessel, the Sayo, when he crossed over from this world into the next. He probably didn't want to abandon it like that on purpose. The deceased man, who was last seen in 2009, was slumped over at a desk next to his boat's radio telephone. Photo albums, clothes, documents, and food containers were strewn about the yacht's partially water-filled cabin. Nobody knows when or why the experienced sailor died. Police found no weapons and no evidence of another person on board. In other words, there were no signs of foul play. Bajorat's remains were preserved thanks to hot temperatures, salty air, and dry ocean winds, the Mirror reported. Forensic scientists concluded that he may have become mummified within weeks of passing away, and a heart attack or stroke may have caused his death. Besides his remains, a letter Bajorat wrote in 2010 to his former wife, Claudia, was perhaps the eeriest object found aboard. The couple broke up in 2008, 2 years before Claudia passed away from cancer in Martinique, and Bajorat wrote the goodbye note following her death, not realizing he was also writing his own farewell message of sorts. The letter states, 30 years we've been together on the same path. Then the power of the demons was stronger than the will to live. You're gone. May your soul find its peace. Your Manfred. It was a very haunting final message. Number 8. Rosie the Shark. Urban explorers got quite the surprise when they came across a great white shark floating in a tank of murky formaldehyde. When you go creeping about, I'm sure you expect to find weird things, but a great white shark? Really? Found at the Wildlife Wonderland Park in Bass, Victoria, Australia, the park closed in 2012 after it was found to be in breach of the Australian Wildlife Act. Many locals often go exploring since they have fond memories from visiting the park in the past, but this place did not have a license to display native animals. So how did this powerful predator end up lying in a tank? Nicknamed Rosie, she was captured in tuna nets in 1998 and was sent to the park where she was forgotten in her rusty tank. Her slowly decaying body is 13 feet long and her spooky shadow can be seen glowing in the darkness. Located roughly 90 minutes outside of Melbourne, the park is well known among both Victorians and trespassers, and images and videos of the strange display have appeared online for years. In 2019, Melbourne artist and photographer Dom Kromsky set out to see the bizarre find for himself, detailing his findings in a Vice article. The preserved apex predators exhibit is accompanied by a sign stating "Mysterious Shark." Kromsky also noticed that someone had pried the top of the tank off and thrown a television into the formaldehyde, and that the tank's glass was cracked, presumably from someone hammering at it with a blunt object. The formaldehyde fumes are so bad that unless you take a gas mask, you can get severely injured. It's not good to breathe that stuff in. Thankfully, someone had forewarned Kromsky and his friend, and the pair brought masks. They found the shark within 2 minutes of passing through the park's dilapidated entrance. Because of the online attention Rosie has gotten, apparently police have now locked the shed where she is located, but vandals keep getting in. There is a Save Rosie the Shark page where people are trying to find her a new home, either in a museum or an aquarium, anywhere so that she doesn't get destroyed. Number 7. The Russian Woodpecker. I'm not talking about a bird. The remote forest north of Kiev, Ukraine's capital city, near the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone, sits the Duga radar, also known as the Russian Woodpecker, an immense structure that juts up over the trees and can be seen from miles around. Seemingly out of place as the only apparent unnatural object in an otherwise pristine environment, the Duga radar is made from hundreds of antennae and turbine, which at first glance combine to resemble a huge wall. Used during the Soviet Union's communist regime, it was nicknamed the Russian Woodpecker because of the clicking sound it transmitted while in use, but the structure's purpose is unknown to this day. Built starting in 1972, the radar was reportedly intended to bounce signals off the ionosphere, enabling its operators to see over the Earth's curvature, perhaps as a way to mitigate long-range missile threats. It was actually marked as a children's camp on Soviet maps to throw off enemies, and the Soviet Union denied that the radar existed, even after suspicions of it arose. All documents relating to its operation were destroyed or remain under lock and key due to its top-secret status. The now dilapidated structure still stands at 492 feet tall and nearly 3,000 feet long. Its former staff was hastily evacuated shortly after the 1986 Chernobyl disaster, and the Duga radar thereafter fell into rapid decay. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 perpetuated its isolation, and the Duga radar saw little to no human contact again until 2013, when guided tours began allowing access to the site. Number 6. Secret room and bullet-filled tubs. In May 2018, a group of explorers visited an abandoned remote site in an unknown location, where they found a secret room containing disturbing materials. Footage posted to the YouTube channel Explore With Us takes viewers along for the journey to the strange location, which was filled with crumbling buildings and old abandoned vehicles. In a one-room structure that the team entered, there was a metal shelving unit covering a wall, which someone ripped away, revealing a gaping hole that led to a hidden room. The walls were covered with pornography and images of cartoon characters, and the floor was littered with alcohol bottles. Meanwhile, someone peeks into some plastic containers only to discover that they were filled with bullets. The comment section went crazy, with some advising the explorers to call the police and report the find, just in case some illicit activity had occurred at the site, perhaps involving missing and kidnapped persons. Others suggested that the site was less sinister in origin, perhaps once acting as a base camp for miners in the region. The latter explanation would also make sense, especially since nearby trailers and other structures contained radio equipment, suggesting the site was used as dispatchers sending workers to and from a mining site. But there's always the chance that the site was repurposed by unsavory individuals after its initial abandonment. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Number 5. The Chicken Church. Sometimes the creepiest object in an abandoned place is the actual structure or dwelling itself. This is certainly the case when it comes to Gereja Ayam, an abandoned place of worship nicknamed the Chicken Church, near Magelang in central Java, Indonesia. Set deep in the jungle, the Chicken Church was built in 1990 by a man named Daniel Alamsja, who claimed to have received a vision from God telling him to build a prayer house atop a hill. Members from 30 nearby villages helped turn the man's vision into a reality. This enchanted place looks exactly like a chicken. Alamsja, who experienced this vision while working 342 miles away in Jakarta, said that the building was neither a chicken nor a church. Instead, it was a prayer house, a place for people who believe in God, the man told the Jakarta Globe in 2015, at age 67. For some time, Gereja Ayam was used as a rehabilitation center for people struggling with various challenges, including disabled children, addicts, people with mental health issues, and disturbed youth. But the costs associated with the building were high, and in 2000, the Chicken Church shut its doors. People of many faiths, including Buddhists, Muslims, and Christians, continue to visit the decaying structure today. The basement contains rooms that were once used as bedrooms and bathrooms, while the above-ground levels are terraced. But 5 of the 8 pillars holding up the church are crumbling, one traveler told the Daily Mail, which reminds us that time and the elements take their toll on abandoned structures. Nature ultimately takes over, and without proper maintenance and renovations, structures eventually become too dilapidated to enter safely. Number 4. The Pyramid of North Dakota. In a remote corner of North Dakota, near the tiny city of Nakoma, in other words, essentially in the middle of nowhere, there is a reinforced concrete pyramid that stands tall against the open sky, along with a handful of accompanying smaller buildings. The site is called the Stanley R. Michelson Safeguard Complex, and it was developed in the 1960s at the height of the Cold War to shoot down incoming Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles. The $6 billion project came with dozens of missile silos and launching silos, a cache of nuclear missiles, and the giant pyramid with a circular shape near the top on each side. It was intended as a radar system for detecting enemy weapons, but the complex was only operational for a short time before it was shut down due to the associated costs, as well as concerns about potentially firing missiles over friendly territory and about the site's effectiveness in deterring a Soviet missile attack. It was decommissioned during the 1970s, and only a few people have been allowed into the complex ever since. The The closest visitors can get to the complex is the roadside that runs alongside it, where they are permitted to stop and take photos. In 2017, the Grand Forks Herald reported that the Cavalier County Job Development Authority purchased part of the facility, hoping to turn it into a data processing and security center, hopefully with the help of Google or another big-name company. Other parts of the property have been sold and auctioned, but some recent attempts by private owners to get rid of their parcels have come up short of what they consider to be an acceptable offer, suggesting that not many people consider the land desirable. After all, who wants an eerie Cold War relic towering over their backyard? Number 3. Hashima Island's Stairway to Hell. Located roughly 10.5 miles from the Nagasaki, Japan coast and partially made from reclaimed land, the tiny 16-acre property known as Hashima Island was used as a coal mining facility. Inhabited by coal mine workers and their families, Hashima Island was home to a jam-packed metropolis, including concrete tower blocks that were connected by a series of overhead bridges, as well as a maze of streets and labyrinths. There were shops, schools, public pools, and more. People, buildings, and pathways were literally stacked on top of one another at Hashima Island, also called Gunkanjima, which means Battleship Island. Hundreds of families lived there, amounting to 5,259 residents during the city's peak, a population density of 216,264 people per square mile, with up to 6 individuals often crammed into a single apartment. To give you an idea of exactly how crowded that is, modern-day Manhattan has a population density of 66,940 people per square mile. Japan's demand for coal ultimately caused the industry to lag, and in 1974 the mine was shut down, and Hashima Island was abandoned after nearly a century of use. Many families left belongings behind, and the structures throughout the island were left as is. What's left of the once bustling city now sits eerily silent and crumbling from decades of decay. Pretty much everything one might encounter on Hashima Island is creepy, including the infamous Stairway to Hell, a legendary staircase that many urban explorers have used to access the roofs of buildings and gain a view of the ruins below. Unfortunately, while visitors can visit Hashima Island via guided tours, only a brief and distant glimpse of the buildings is available. Entering the ruins requires special permission from the Nagasaki City Council and is typically not granted to everyday tourists. Number 2. IM Cooling Tower. Built in 1921, Power Plant IM is a now abandoned power station in Charleroi, Belgium that once served as one of the country's largest coal-fired power plants. At its peak, it provided electricity and gas to around 6 million people. It remained in operation until 2007, when it closed its doors at the demand of protesters, who vocally and repeatedly pointed out that the plant was responsible for 10% of Belgium's CO2 emissions. Today, the facility sits abandoned despite years-long plans to demolish it, with its massive cooling tower looming over the nearby neighborhood of Monceau-sur-Sambre. The structure was capable of cooling 480,000 gallons of water per minute. Water was let into the top of the tower and was cooled by incoming wind entering through openings at the bottom of the building. But it's merely a shell of what it once was, having been gutted by trespassers looking for scrap metal. The moss-covered interior of the cooling tower, for those who are slick and daring enough to bypass the property's security guards and make their way in, resembles something out of a dystopian sci-fi movie. Parts of the property have started being demolished, and security has tightened at the site, meaning that the days to catch a glimpse of the interior may be numbered, or perhaps over. Number 1. Eiffel Tower Ghost Town. Imagine what it would feel like if you went to Paris and this city, famous for being a cosmopolitan metropolis and one of the world's most popular hotspots, was empty. While many cities took on this appearance amid the ongoing global pandemic, these views were thankfully short-lived, and the world is slowly resuming to business as usual. But there is one place you can visit where things remain eerily silent, and its most noticeable structure looks like the Eiffel Tower. But it's not Paris. Located about 2 hours west of Shanghai, China, Tianducheng is a miniature Paris that was built starting in 2007. Nicknamed the Paris of the East, it was intended as an upscale neighborhood for population spillover from Shanghai, with neoclassical apartments, Parisian facades, Renaissance fountains, cobblestone streets, and a 300-foot-tall replica of the Eiffel Tower. Although it was meant to accommodate around 10,000 residents, Tianducheng attracted a handful of newcomers at best. Despite its lovely architecture, the development was planted smack dab in the middle of a rural region, its designers having missed the mark by not building it close enough to public transportation and other connections to urban life. But there may come a day when Tianducheng is no longer a ghost town with post-apocalyptic overtones, according to Yale professor Stephen Roach, who wrote in a Project Syndicate column that as China's population and cities rapidly expand, it won't be able to build housing to keep up. In other words, people will need housing already available to them when possible. So the Chinese Paris may be lived in after all. But right now, it's a creepy ghost town. Thanks for watching! Which place was your favorite? Would you visit any of these places if you could? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'd love to have you! See you next time!